Today, we're joined by John Griffin of Wildcard Gaming. He talks a little bit about how he got started in the esports industry and what is new with Wildcard Gaming.
This is crazy. This is crazy. This is crazy.
Everywhere you turn, it's the same old sports talk, the same headlines, the same news, and the same boring information. This podcast is here to change all of that. We bring you hot sports takes, winning sports betting strategy and picks, reliable gaming industry news, and breaking interviews with some of the biggest names in sports business. My name is Ryan Newpel, and welcome to the Noop Sports Show. All right, welcome back to another episode of the Noop Sports Show. I'm your host, Ryan Newpel, here with you each and every episode. Hey, thanks so much, everybody, for listening, taking a little bit of time out of your day. I know you have other places you could be. You choose to be here listening, watching us. Thank you so much. Appreciate that. We have a very special guest today with us. We have John Griffin, the CEO of Wildcard Gaming. John, thanks for joining me.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Hey, definitely anytime. I'm super excited for this conversation. I'm super excited to hear more about what you guys have at Wildcard Gaming, more about the esports industry. It's not something we always cover here on our show, and I think that can bring a little different angle to what we cover. So super excited to hear kind of your story, and thanks again for being here.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I'll go into Wildcard a little bit and kind of what we do, kind of a little bit of my background.
Sure.
I was a former baseball player growing up. Went through high school, had an opportunity to go play NAIA ball. Decided that it really wasn't for me. Went on to start my studies at Texas A&M, and got involved one night when I was going up to meet one of my buddies for dinner. Walked into his dorm room. One of his friends said, "Hey man, why don't you sit down and not talk, because I need to focus." And I was like, "What are you talking about?" And he was sitting there playing a video game, and I was like, "Focus, play a video game. What do you need that for?" And I got intrigued really quick. I needed something to fill my competitive void from no longer having baseball. And what it was competitive video gaming. It's Counter-Strike. We looked at that, and I said, "Hey, that's really kind of cool." Got involved with competitive gaming myself. Ended up becoming a professional player from 2005 to 2009 inside Dota, which is a modification of Warcraft 3. And then kind of for a while, I took a break after that, met my wife. She said, "Hey, go get a real job." I said, "Oh, all right, fine. I'll get a real job. That's not a problem." And then, 2015 rolls around. One of my former teammates does really, really well on a world stage, makes a couple $1 million doing it. And I turned to my wife and I said, that was a guy that I played with. Now he's a millionaire. Like, what should we do here? She said, "Well, don't quit your day job, but, try to get back into it." I tried to get back into it, and, I wasn't very good. And so at that point in time, just kind of, sunk back into a coaching role. And when I got into a coaching role, I met one of my business partners, and we said, "Hey, the organization that we were working for at the time, so we can do this better than them. Why not just do it ourselves?" And so we went out and kind of formed this organization just kind of as a passion project. And ever since then, it's just kind of gotten bigger and bigger and bigger. And, at this point, last year we were on world final stages for, 4 different games and just having a whole lot of success. It's been a lot of fun.
That's completely amazing. That's such an amazing story. And that's, props to you for kind of going down a path and then taking the real job route. I mean, I'm sure you were like, well, define real job. What is a real job, right? Because now when you look at all these jobs that are coming up in the esports space, I mean, that's the future of jobs. I mean, is the professional gamers and just anything in this space. And I think you hit on something really important as you were going through that I've always considered esports, and a lot of us that have been in the sports world have this competitive drive to us. We have this competitive nature. And so esports, what a lot of people don't understand is esports and gaming and things like that fills that void. You said it perfectly. It fills that because, we may not have the knees to go out and run and play basketball anymore. We may not have the shoulder to play baseball anymore, but man, we can game. We can still get up there and compete against others. So I think that's kind of where you see esports booming. People are competitive and they love that piece of it.
Right. Yeah. I completely agree. I mean, that's one of the biggest pitches that we make is, not everybody's 6'4", 250 and runs a 4.5 40.
Sure.
You're not going to run into a middle linebacker running down the street every single day, but you can take a guy that's 5'2", 110 pounds, and he can be the best player in the world.
Yeah.
And that just is what it is.
Yeah,
So
for sure, for sure. So that's a great background of kind of how you got started, but give us just a little bit more about wildcard gaming in general. And so, you know, for some that may not understand this industry, you know, what are you guys doing in this space? You know, I know you're forming teams and things of that nature, but give us just a
right.
little bit more about what you guys are actually doing as a company.
Yeah. So as a company, the premise of what we do is we form these teams out of different games. So we try to put our teams across all different types of genres of games, so that we can kind of widen our audience the best that we can. We have teams that are involved in PC gaming and in mobile gaming, because mobile gaming has been one of the hot topics recently here in esports. So we've expanded into mobile. We've got teams that are in Australia, in Europe, here in North America. We kind of spread ourselves out. That's the beautiful thing about esports is you really can go global with just about anything that you do. You're not limited to, like, let's take example for the Houston Astros, right? You're the Houston Astros. You have your MILB teams, and that's about it, right? Like your affiliates. Whereas we can expand and go wherever we want, which is the beautiful thing about it. We also have influencers that come through and use their social media platforms to use it as advertising tools, to use it as charitable fundraising tools. We're simple entertainment. That's what we are.
So tell me a little bit about why. Educate me here now. Educate me. Why would an individual who's good at playing esports, why would they need a team? Isn't it an individual thing? Tell me why they need a team, or why they come to you guys, and how that necessarily works, what the benefits of that is for them.
Sure. So in certain esports, it is kind of an individual thing, but more and more esports are moving towards a team format. Everything that we participate in is in a team format outside of the fighting game, genre, which is typically a 1 versus 1 type of deal. So what we do is we provide a lot of back-end staff. We have analysts, coaches, just like anything that you're going to see in a regular sports team. Yep. We have guys like in one of the games that we compete in, which is Rainbow Six Siege. There's an offense side and there's a defense side in which we play. So we essentially have an offensive coordinator and we have a defensive coordinator.
Amazing.
So a lot of this is really like we pick and choose the best part of sports that we see, that we're aware of, or that we've been a part of, and put that into esports here, and be able to put this across a internet platform that can go global.
Sure, totally makes sense. It totally makes sense. And so, getting into a little bit more, I guess, the direction of this show and kind of the audience that's here is really a sports betting focused audience, very heavily into that space. And one of the things that we're seeing a lot of, is a lot of these, esports and betting is coming. This is coming. This is going to be a big thing. Give us your, I know you're not an expert in sports betting, and that's not something that you're, but you have to have at least an opinion or a thought on how esports and sports betting are either going to mix, or are they going to collide and it's just not going to work. You give us a little bit of your thoughts on that.
Yeah. So from my understanding, I'm not a huge betting guy, but my understanding is, a lot of betting is algorithm based, or you have your trends that you go out and you determine. The same thing can happen in esports. You can build these algorithms, you can build these trends. I think it's something that's synonymous. I think that's something that can really work hand in hand together. I think that you can go out and, you can develop your own system by watching these games, as long as you take the time to understand the games. It is a learning curve, and it, just as well as anything when you get into sports gambling, not everybody grows up a horse racing fan. You have to go out and you have to understand, which horses are good, which tracks to pay attention to, et cetera, right? Same thing here. You pick and choose what interests you, become an expert in that field, and then move forward from there.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's good advice for anything we do, right? I mean, whatever we spend our time doing is what we get good at. I always tell my kids the same thing. I'm like, hey, whatever you're spending your time on is probably what you're going to end up being good at in the future. So, if you want to be good at, Rocket League, you're spending 5 hours playing Rocket League every day. You're probably going to become pretty good at it. My wife and I always argue about that, right? Because she's always like, well, I don't want them playing so many video games. I'm like, well, listen, maybe that's going to be their future. They're spending a lot of time. They're getting pretty good at it. Who knows? So it's just an interesting time where we're spending a lot of time playing that type of thing in those games. Hey, one other question regarding somebody joining your team.
Sure.
So give me an idea, like, can anybody just come and say, hey, I want to be on your team? Or I'm assuming just like a major league sports organization or something like that, you guys have some sort of a tryout or audit or something to make sure that the person is legit and fits the qualifications of your team. Tell me how that works.
Yeah, so we operate as like a normal business. Like we're going to do our background checks on anybody that comes to us. We do have an open email for anybody that says, hey, I want to join. We look through the email. Majority of the time it's just like random people that, are good, but may not fit what we need to do. But every once in a while we get an email that piques our interest. Normally we have our game plan set that says, this is the game that we want to go into, and we have our particular reasons why. We have our scouting lists built out. A lot of the in-depth analytics of the players that go along with it, because there's a lot of websites out there that provide a lot of detailed statistics, and that's kind of how we build our teams. Is we build our teams through spreadsheets. So,
and do these players get contracts like you would imagine a sports player getting?
Yeah, absolutely.
So they're getting some sort of a contract to be a part of your team and play for you guys. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow,
base salary,
cool.
They get, majority of winnings, they get everything that goes along with it, benefits, everything. So
very cool. Very cool. So those of you out there that maybe didn't have this, vision of what this team esports looks like. I mean, Wildcard Gaming is doing it right. And John is heading up that charge there at Wildcard. So what's next for you guys? What's on the horizon for Wildcard? What kind of deals you have in place? What kind of things are you looking maybe to get out of the betting community, even since we have a lot of betting people here listening? What do you guys need? What's next for Wildcard Gaming?
Yeah, I mean, it's just continuing to expand. We have a footprint right now. It's always expansion based. I always say that esports right now is in that wild west type scenario. It is a gold rush, and whoever's going to go out there and grab the most land is going to have the most chance for success. And so our goal is to expand. We have a lot of focus on the Australian market. We have a lot of focus here on the mobile market here inside North America as well. We think that both are expanding at a rapid pace, and we think that it's pretty easy for us to get into both markets, and we've had success in both. So, we think that that's really where we're headed next.
Very cool. Very cool. So give me a little bit about, I'll wrap this up. I know you're a busy man, got a lot going on, but I'm just so intrigued by this space, and my questions just keep popping in. I told you I'd be all over the place, and I am. But so as far as like games that are out there, I mean, you hear a lot about the same core 4, 5, 6 games that are out there. I mean, what's the chances that new games come in, similar to like a Fortnite did a couple years ago or whatever, and just took over? I kept thinking like, something else is going to come and take over. What are really the chances of something like that happening? And, or are we pretty much planted with our games that we're, playing or that are monopolizing this space, I guess?
Sure. From a betting perspective, I mean, you look at the top 4 games for betting right now, everybody that's looking at it is essentially Counter-Strike, Dota 2, League of Legends, and Rainbow Six.
Sure.
Those are the top 4 that you're going to see, right? A little bit of Rocket League sprinkled in as well. But what's really intriguing and what's caught, I think, just about every organization in the world's eye is Valorant, which is the new game that Riot Games is producing. It's in the same vein as Counter-Strike, except for the fact that it kind of takes the next step, which is adding abilities to these characters that are being played in game. I think that's really the next thing. Like if I was speaking to somebody that says I want to get into gambling, into esports, and I want to get into a new scene where there's not as much competition or information out there, right? Valorant is definitely the one to pay attention to, in my opinion. There's going to be a lot of action around that game.
Awesome. That's amazing. That's amazing. So speaking of betting again on these games, what's your thought on I guess manipulating the odds and the lines and things like that, and maybe having some because you're always worried about in sports, you're worried about people throwing games, you're worried about people throwing matches. I mean, I could see that being a thing in esports. But as these teams form and as these these guys are making money as a profession doing this, you're probably going to see less and less of that. What are your thoughts around, I guess, fraudulent activity going on when there's betting money on the line?
Yeah, sure. There's definitely been teams that have been, that have essentially gone through that whole situation already.
Sure.
Essentially whenever that actually gets proven that it's happening, they've been banned from competition, indefinitely. So in my opinion, I mean, it's a lot like, you look at Pete Rose, like can't get into the hall, right? Like these guys, they literally can't play anymore.
Tarnish.
Yeah. And so you think about it as, previously people were like, well, I can just hide behind the anonymity of the internet, right? And I can just change my alias, change an IP address here or there, or whatever the case may be is, and they'll never be able to find me.
Yeah.
But now with the way that the esports industry has evolved, and we've gotten to the point where we are actually showing up to in-person events on a regular basis for every single game, like you can't do that anymore.
Yeah.
And so in my opinion, there should be less and less of that, just because you can't hide.
Yeah, you can. And your name, your brand around yourself and your team is such a big part of it, right? The influencer model is such a big part of it. And so I think, to tarnish that, you just wouldn't want to risk that on something like that. So I tend to agree with you. And it's amazing that we have shifted from this anonymous gaming to this hey, I'm a gamer and here I am and here's who I am, and showing up and signing autographs and all of that. So it's pretty cool to see that shift. Well, cool, John. Well, what are the last words? Any last thoughts for the audience here before I let you go? Anything that's on your mind?
I mean, nothing crazy. It's just, what I would always say is give us a chance. It's fun. I didn't think that it would be as fun as it is. A lot of people look at video games and they still think of, somebody that's trapped in mom's basement that doesn't come out and see the light of day, right?
Sure.
That's not the case. That's not what esports is. Esports is a bunch of guys that are, we're social out there all the time. We're in front of the spotlight a lot. It is, in terms of our spotlight, at least.
Sure.
It's something that, had a negative stigma for so long. And I think that right now we're working really, really hard to change that. Give it a chance. Come in and see how competitive and how intense some of these things can get if you take the time to learn it.
Sure.
And if you take the time to learn it, it's really fun.
Well, I give you props on where you've been, and congrats on all the success in business. If anybody was interested in talking more or learning more about what you guys do, how they get a hold of you yourself or your business in general?
Yeah, sure. So our website is wildcard.gg.
Okay.
And my personal email, if you want to reach out to me for whatever reason, is Griff, Griff, @wildcard.gg. Would love to hear from you, answer any questions you have.
Amazing. I'll put all those in the show notes so you guys don't have to jot them all down. They'll be in the show notes. You can click them and get to John. Very approachable guy, super nice guy in the industry. John, I really appreciate you being here, giving me a little bit of your time. And if I can ever do anything in return, don't hesitate to reach out.
Awesome, Ryan. I appreciate it so much. And thank you for giving us the opportunity to come on and talk.
Sure thing. Thanks for being here, John. Thanks all you listeners for being here as well. We'll be back for another episode here shortly. Until then, everybody stay safe and have a great day. Bye-bye, John.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Noob Sports Show. If you enjoyed this podcast, please consider subscribing to our iTunes channel today. Plus, visit us at noobsports.com for more picks, previews, strategy, and news. That's knupsports.com.